Imagine a food so versatile, so prolific, and so vital that it supports a nation. One might expect that particular food to have a unique appearance and be rather exceptional. Yet by the 18th century it was already commonplace. Yet today we sometimes tend to take it for granted. Hello everyone, this is Isaac White from the Crockett Tavern Museum here in Morristown, Tennessee. And we want to welcome you to today's episode in which we will be discussing a grass that would turn into the king of crops. The history of corn, or sometimes referred to as maize, is, like many things that we've discussed on the channel, rather unique and expansive. The first areas of cultivation for corn were found to be in the regions of what is now present-day Mexico and Central America. Archaeological evidence suggests that the first cultivation of corn started anywhere between 9,000 to 10,000 years ago, and we see that we have the Mesoamerican cultures, such as the Maya, Aztecs, and Olmecs, to thank for the cultivation and development of corn as we know it today, which is quite frankly a remarkable feat because the precursor to corn as we know it today originated from a wild prairie grass known as teosinte. Yet with these cultivation techniques as they developed, they were able to turn it into a wonderful food source for many cultures, not only in Central America, but North and South America as well. By the time Christopher Columbus landed on the eastern shores of North and South America in 1492, corn was already a staple crop being grown in both North and South America, and it was a very secure food source for many Native American cultures. In fact, it was so widespread and versatile that Columbus was fairly impressed with this crop, and when he returned to Spain, he brought corn seed with him in order for it to be planted and cultivated in Europe and northern Africa. From there, the explosion of corn across the world was vast, extremely fast, unlike any other agricultural crop. Now, it must be noted that the variety of corn that we're predominantly familiar with today is known as yellow dent corn. But that wouldn't have been around at the time period of the 18th and 19th century in which we tend to focus on. Yellow dent corn was actually brought about by some hybridization of different corn varieties, such as flint and flour corns, which resulted in what later became known as yellow dent corn. It was also crossed over with a particular red corn variety known as Johnny Hopkins in the late 1840s. But prior to this, we see that the main corn that was being eaten at the time was flint corn or dent corn. Now, before you get on to my case about, well, I just thought you said that yellow dent corn, which we're all familiar with today, was not around until the late 1840s, and you'd be correct. But the particular variety of dent corn that would have been frequently consumed in the late 18th, early 19th centuries was typically referred to sometimes as gourd seed, southern dent, white dent, or Harvey dent. Okay, I made that last one up, and I apologize for that joke. I know it was terribly corny. And I'm going to go ahead and stop with those jokes right now because I've got a million of them, but I'm not going to embarrass myself any more than I already have. Either way, white dent would have been the common variety to be found at that time. And as we go in to discuss the pros and cons and the similarities or differences of appearance with flint and dent, I will refer to the dent corn as white dent in order to separate it and make it stand out aside from its yellow counterpart. Now, one of the main ways that you can easily identify yellow dent corn or flint is basically just by appearance alone. Now, if you don't know what flint corn looks like, just wait till Thanksgiving rolls around, because it is the variety of corn that we typically know or refer to sometimes as Indian corn. It's very easily recognized by the variety of vibrant colors in its kernels, as well as the hard, flint-like texture to the kernels itself, hence its namesake. But interestingly enough, this flint corn was actually one of the main corn crops, especially in North America, that would have been used to make a staple Native American dish known as hominy. And interestingly enough, we see that even today, there is a variety of flint corn that we still commonly use to make one of the most commonplace snacks that we all know and love, popcorn. White dent, on the other hand, is very similar to yellow dent, in which it can be recognized by its color. Now, of course, yellow dent has a very vibrant yellow color to it, whereas white is paler in color, but you can easily identify them by the dents in the kernels of the corn on the corn cob. And white dent would have been that which predominated the southern agricultural fields. Flint would have predominated the northern agricultural fields. Either way, both of these varieties were learned about from the Native Americans, and they would have been used, regardless of the variety, to make meal for porridges, breads, or of course to feed livestock. And mind you, corn was not just used for making breads or anything like that, or for feeding animals. It was everything. It was not only food, it was not only game pieces, which we'll discuss in just a moment, but it could also be used for monetary gain. But before we dive into that little aspect of it, I will say that corn was one of the most vital crops that people needed to have here on the frontier. And this is evidenced in an excerpt from David Crockett's autobiography from 1834, in which he stated that they depended upon the game of the country and the wild fruit as much as on their corn patches. In Letters from an American Farmer in 1782, it states that corn is the principal crop in this country, and without it, the settlers would either surely starve or move on. And as previously stated, it was not only vital and essential for survival, especially on the frontier, but it was also used for monetary gain. Now, of course, like many things we see, even today the same principle still applies. The prices of corn would constantly vary from one year, one decade to the next. And in some cases it would start off at 10 shillings a bushel, down to 2, back up to 10, back down to 2, and then back up to 20 shillings a bushel, which is pretty good money in those times. But, of course, what were the determining factors for the constant variation, at least in the 16 and 1700s, for the price of corn per bushel? Well, it's like many things even today. There is the ever-changing valuation of money. There's also certain market value factors that go into play here. And of course, as in the wake of the Revolutionary War, politics get involved. And in fact, by the time of the American Revolution, because corn was such a staple of the colonist diet and was desperately needed, especially for the Continental Army, it reached the cost of 100 shillings a bushel. Now, we see in some cases that it could go beyond that, and people could make themselves a pretty hefty sum of money. Take, for example, this one particular incident in which this one farmer planted 8 bushels of seed corn, which yielded him 864 bushels of corn total. Now, he took that corn in tow and he traded it with the Native Americans for beaver skins, which, when he took it to market and sold off those skins, well, he was left with a tiny little sum of 327 pounds. A pretty decent sum, even in today's society. But as also mentioned, that corn was not only used for its nutritional value. In fact, in certain things like the games of fox and geese, checkers, or other particular board games of the time, corn kernels could be used as counter pieces or game pieces in which to play those games. It could also, in some cases, be used to help count votes from a ballot box. But through it all, corn still remained, and still does to this day, a main vital subsistence crop, without which the nation would surely collapse. And at the end of it all, corn still remains the king of the crops. Well, folks, this video is a little bit shorter than the ones we've previously done, but either way, we hope you've enjoyed it. As always, if you haven't yet, feel free to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, as well as click the bell icon so you'll never miss an upload. But until next week, this is Isaac White signing off from the Crockett Tavern Museum, saying goodbye and God bless.